because life is all about how you respond. Life is all about how you respond. The saying is, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. Because a lot of us can become victims. A lot of us can become, finger pointers. A lot of us can just play the blame game. But at the end of the day, it's all on us. Yo, welcome back to the podcast, man. Today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence. Life is all about emotions. It's all about emotions. Of course, it's about logic as well. But when you think about things, there's an emotional attachment to every single thought that we have. There's an emotional attachment to every single thought that we have. So when you think things, there's a chemical reaction that happens in your brain that sends signals to your body on how to feel. Now, when you think things, there's a chemical reaction that happens in your brain that sends signals to your body that tells you how to feel. So, if you cross in the street and there's a car coming and you look and you see it, the thought is, oh snap. Oh snap. Now, that thought sends a signal to your brain that releases chemicals in your body that allows you to feel an emotion that you react to have you try to jump out the way, run out the way, move out the way, or just stand there in shock and get hit. Kind of like the deer in the headlights. They see a car coming and those headlights leave them stuck. In life, there's an emotion attached to every single thought that we have. Now, the thing about emotional intelligence is you decide how you respond to those emotions based on the thoughts that are stimulated. One thing my dad used to tell me growing up was always think before you react. Think before you react. Think before you react. Now, this concoction happens so fast that the emotion is already there. So the concept of think before you react is allow the emotions to come in, but don't be reactive to the emotion. Unless it's, kill or be killed, like some survival instinct type of thing. But most scenarios that we end up in are scenarios that allow us to process those emotions and then decide how to act afterwards. Just decide how to respond. So what my dad was trying to tell me was decide how to respond in every single situation. Don't allow the situation to allow you, or don't allow the situation to decide how you respond. So again, is decide how you're going to respond to the situation and don't allow the situation to decide how you respond. With that being said, we need to learn to think before we react. Think about the outcomes. If you have time to meditate on the outcomes of your reaction based on any situation, you need to take time to actually weigh those outcomes and make the best decision for yourself. Make the best decision for yourself. Because if you don't, it leaves you powerless. It leaves you powerless. When you don't control how you respond to things, it leaves you powerless. It leaves you a puppet to whatever comes your way. And that the outside world will get to control how you decide to respond to every single thing. Because again, instead of being proactive, we become reactive, and becoming reactive leaves you less proactive. You got to learn how to control your actions. So one of the number one things in life that a person can learn is self-control. Self-control is the key to every bit of success that a person will have in this world. Because the only thing you truly can control in this world is yourself. You can't control your kids. You can't control your mama, your daddy, family members, or friends. Enemies, foes. You can't control anybody. You can't control anything other than yourself. Now, if you don't even have control of yourself, that leaves you powerless in this world. You don't have control of anything at that point. So what a person needs to do is learn to control their mind. But that's a whole nother conversation. Learning to control your mind. Learning to control your mind is controlling your thoughts. When you control your thoughts, you control your reality. You control your life. You control every outcome that comes other than what you cannot control. So the saying is, control what you can control and let go of what you can't. Control what you can control, but let go of what you can't. Because if you don't have control over something, then there's nothing you can do about it anyways, but decide how you're going to respond to that uncontrollable scenario or substance or whatever the case may be, situation. But you have to learn to control yourself. Learn to control yourself. Because if you don't learn to control yourself, again, it leaves you powerless in this world. And it all starts in the mind, but if we don't learn to control ourselves, that leaves us under the control of others. And believe you me, the one thing the world wants to do, the main thing the world wants to do, society wants to do, is control you. It's tell you what to think, tell you what to say, tell you who to be, tell you who you are. And if you don't figure out who you are, it leaves them to tell you who you are. And then that pretty much dictate the persona that you try to give off instead of authenticity. Authenticity, how you say it. Like, if you're not being the real you, then who are you being? So we go back to think before you react. Think about who you want to be at the end of the day. Think about how you want people to see you at the end of the day, how you want to see yourself at the end of the day. Think about if you're able to live with certain decisions that you make or not after you make them, before you make them. Weigh the options. If I decide to do this, will I be able to live with that? And if I don't think I can, maybe I shouldn't do it. But if I can, okay then, by all means, live your best life. But the main thing about controlling how you react to things It's controlling your peace. You know the saying is protect your peace. Protect your peace. Everybody always saying it, protect your peace, protect your peace. But I don't think a lot of people know how to protect their peace. You protect your peace by deciding how you're going to react to any given situation that you end up in at any given moment, at any given time. Yes, it becomes it's a trait that a person has to learn because, growing up in this world as a human, you start out as a baby. So all you know is to react. All you know is to react. You don't really know how to use your brain at that point. You don't know how to use your body. You got to learn how to use your body. Then you realize one day that you control this body, and then you got to figure out what's good and what's not good for you. What's beneficial and what's not beneficial. What's detrimental and what's not. So it's all a learning process. But once you learn these things, it becomes an ability that you have to work on. And the more you work on it, the more you are able to use it. It becomes a superpower, literally. Because we are superhuman beings. We are Superman, Superwoman, whatever you want to call it. But humans dictate this world more than any other creature on this planet. We do have dominion. We do control what type of earth that we do have, what type of society we do have, what type of person you're going to be, what type of home you're going to run, what type of family you're going to build. You may not be able to control every one of those family members, but you can influence and inspire the type of people that they do become based on who you are. Because they say we are who we hang around. Which again brings us to the saying, treat people how you want to be treated. Treat people how you want to be treated. Treat people how you want to be treated. If you want to be treated like crap, you'll treat people like crap. And I'm not telling you to do that, but they say hurt people hurt people. Misery wants company. But also at the same time, we give off an aura that allows us to dictate the energy in rooms or the energy in environments. What another saying is, no candle loses its flame by lighting another. So when you become the light, you can turn on the light in other people. But then we have these things called energy vampires. People that want to suck you dry of all your positivity. But the thing is, at the end of the day, light will always shun out darkness. Light will always win in the end. Light can never exist, or darkness can never exist where light is. But light can exist where darkness is. At the end of the day, no darkness can be where light is at the same time. And it works the same with your mind. It works the same with your thought. It works the same with your energy. You can never be negative and positive at the exact same time. You can never think a negative thought and a positive thought at the exact same time. They have to come simultaneously. But there will always be one or the other. But you as a human being have to serve which one, or you're going to have to choose which one you're going to serve or allow to stand present in your life majority of the time. It's all on you. It's all on you. You control the controllables and let go of what you can't control. But you'll begin to realize that you can control way more than you can't control. And the moment you realize that, you'll realize that you are the dictator in your life who produces the outcomes of your future in the present moment with the decisions that you make. And they say the hardest thing to tame is the tongue. The hardest thing to tame is what you say, what comes out of your mouth. Which is why it's better to say nothing over something. It's better to say nothing over something. The saying is, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You know? You should listen more than you talk. Especially when you ain't got nothing to say. And another saying is, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. At least you ain't got to worry about trying to take nothing back. Because you can't take it back once it's out. Now all you can do is apologize. All you can do is regret. All you can try to do is make amends. I mean, unless there's the truth. And even with the truth, sometimes you got to bottle that up. Because everybody not ready for that. You can literally hurt people's feelings with the truth. And I'm not saying don't be truthful. But sometimes you got to spoon feed it. Sometimes it got to come out little by little. Because one thing I've heard, another saying I've heard, man, it's just so many, there's so many quotes in this world that can literally just bring life to people. But the saying is, too much enlightenment can blind a person. Too much enlightenment can leave you blind. Like, especially if you a truth seeker, you can receive so much truth that it'll actually break your heart. It'll deter you from going down the rabbit hole. It'll stop you from seeking. Because when you find it, it'll leave you shattered. You have to literally be built to sustain your mental health when it comes to seeking the truth in this world that we live in. You got to be built for it. Because again, another saying is, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss. Me personally, I believe knowing is better than not knowing, but some people would rather not know than know. And to each his own. Because again, every mind isn't built to handle the type of truth that you can learn when you actually seeking it. Because you'll realize that we live in a world that's upside down and inside out. And you'll realize that there is no excuse for the way that society and the world is set up other than ignorance, other than not knowing, But again, that's a whole nother conversation. We started this talking about emotional intelligence, man. Emotional intelligence. Control how you respond to things, man. Think before you react. Take a breath, breathe. Woosah. Walk away. Don't say anything. Depending on the situation, will decide the response that you need to give. But at the end of the day, you are always in control of the response. If it's not a flight or flight, type of thing. And in most of these situations, it's more than enough time to gather yourself and decide how you're going to respond based on just blurting some stuff out or, just running out here and swinging on people and, whatever the case may be. Because most of these situations where we're super reactive leave us in regret. It leave us in regret. We say something that we wish we didn't say. We do something that we wish we didn't do. So on and so forth. And a lot of that can be, avoided if we just learn to pause and think for a little bit. Take a break. Give it some time to marinate. Meditate on it for a little bit. Meditate on it for a little bit, man. Because, life is all about how you respond. Life is all about how you respond. The saying is, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. It's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. Because, a lot of us can become victims. A lot of us can become, finger pointers. A lot of us can just play the blame game. But at the end of the day, it's all on us to decide if we're going to be a victor or a victim. If we're going to prosper or fall. If we going to go to war or we going to accept defeat. It's all on us. It's all on us. Because when we look at the word responsibility, when you look at the word responsibility, the key word is respond and then ability. Respond and then ability. It's the ability to respond based on how you want to, how you decide to, not just being reactive like a 2-year-old. Responsibility is how you respond with an ability to dictate things for your better outcome, or maybe even another's. You may not say something that you know is going to hurt that person, no matter if they need the truth or not, based on where they are in the scenario that they in right now. They may have just lost their job, or they just might have went through a breakup, or they just might have failed a test or something like that was super huge, and it could be in a situation to where they just feel like the world is ending. They don't need you come plummeting down on them saying, well, you should have studied, or maybe you should have treated that person better, or maybe you should have performed better on the job. Like, people not trying to hear that at that moment. They might just need a listening ear for them to vent to, so that way they don't bottle it up and end up exploding somewhere. That's why we need friends. That's why we need counselors. That's why we need therapists. That's why we need someone that's not going to judge us and not going to try to heal us right away. Somebody just allow me to vent and let me say how I feel. The ability to respond. Responsibility. So I'm not gonna ramble too much longer. I just think that there's a lot more in this world that we can control if we decide to control it and let go of what we can't. But the best way to control anything is by weighing the outcomes of the reactions and responses that we give before we give them. Because it's a lot of things that we do in this world, and we do it over and over constantly. There's things that we do over and over constantly, and I've said this so many times on this podcast. It's like, when you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that's the definition of insanity. Again, another saying. So you as a person living the life that you live, if you are tired of living that life and getting the responses that you get and getting the outcomes that you get, then maybe you need to switch things up. Maybe you need to learn to control the controllables. And if you're able to do something over and over and over and over and get the same result, you're able to change that decision as well. Instead of going back and doing the same thing again and expecting something different and complaining about it and pointing the finger, being a victim. Emotional intelligence. Like I say all the time on this podcast, man, at the end of the day, when you change, everything changes. If you want to change the world, you change yourself. If you want to change your world, you change yourself. And when you change, everything changes. So life for life. I'm out.